Hello, everybody. Or, sticking with the script, hello, everybody. It's Sunday, May 22nd, 2022. Oh, hi there. I see I'm streaming because I hit function F11, the worst keyboard shortcut ever to make Windows Terminal, this program I'm in, to take it out of hyper-focused full screen mode, and so I can see this little red dot on OBS's little taskbar icon. So let's begin. I should switch to Shift-C. Yeah, I'm doing Shift-C. I delivered all my work for the office. It came down on Friday while I was at the shop getting my Jeep repaired, a real Jeep Wrangler, not one of those lesser Jeeps. And so I'm free to do some of my own stuff. Think there's a difference? Look at the resale values. Anyway, it's time to open this one up with the t-shirt reveal. I can't really see myself, so I'll go over to another screen. Let's try the broadcast one. Being strange has its perks. I'm Dr. Strange too. There, that ought to get some popular keywords in here. On to business, or actually not, on to being, bending reality, opening your eyes, and changing your life and the world for the better forever. Ready? Okay, let's begin. So I'm going to do another one of those copy and paste and formatting here and publishing it on mikelev.in of one of my latest poems that came to me in one of those quite few states. This is my work. I was doing something called a rank layer, and this last step, writing the raw data into Excel file, this may take a while. Indeed it does, but it's been delivered. It's out there. I keep my other core library stuff there because I'm always improving as I go, living documents. Here we've got the streaming area, and when I brought this up, I realized I was watching Elon Musk, and the video before this, he was talking about how to teach education stuff, and he was talking about tools, and he was saying less focus on the tools. Don't talk about the screwdriver and the wrench. Instead, talk about the car and the engine, and when you get up to a part, how do you fix this? How do you open it? Then you go, oh, that's what a screwdriver's for. That's what a wrench is for. And I'm taking the completely opposite approach here. I'm going to teach you the tools. All right. I kid you not, I'm going to teach you the tools. Oh, here's some markdown. Here's some markdown in Vim. This is kind of like where we're heading with all of this. I want you in full screen Vim, in a broader sense in Linux, in pure Unix/Linux environment, which is the command line interface, the old school set of commands, a very standardized way of operating computers that has been around and probably always will be around. The joke goes, when our descendants return to Earth in 100,000 years, 10 million years, whatever, we'll find they have a Linux boot kernel. So, poetry. And my macro that I showed you the other day, it is working. It always was working. This is a test.jpg. I just tried to get out of the macro some mistakes I made, and in doing that I introduced more mistakes. So my macro is working, for creating optimized images in Markdown for use in Jekyll. So this is my poem, and again, you do get a preview because I wrote it in Apple Notes, and I do copy and paste it from Apple Notes, and I go back using my virtual screen system. I switch from my personal journal, which is B1, that's where I am, to B2. That's mikelev.in, and I'll read my last one to you before I do the new one. Let's see, V, Shift W. There's a falsy Pied Piper and a flossy Pied Piper, and the one that you follow will be a chromium swiper or terminal typer, and your fate either sealed or be free. Be free. All right, so ampersand J adds a new journal entry. I guess I ought to run the great Carmack so that you can see my keystrokes as I go. I guess it's not really that important because it's poetry and not coding, but still you'll see my my keystrokes as I do this task. First thing, I'm already in insert mode. You can tell by the I-beam cursor as opposed to the square cursor. If I go out of insert mode by hitting escape, my cursor returns to a square. If I go back into insert mode by hitting I, it goes to an I-beam. That's in my Vim RC, which I guess I can show you. b//.vimrc. It's always loaded. I got to change my changes there. Go to my history here, which still has it in there. I go down a bit. It's one of the more recent ones I added. So these two lines here do that. So that's the way Vim is. You throw a little command in here that you oftentimes get off of Googling, Stock Exchange, Stack Overflow. Paste it in here, and every time you load Vim, it now has new behavior, and it's permanently and forever improving your life. It's a virtue. And look, it's only 75 lines. It's not a lot of customization. So that gets you to the point that it's not really a lot, and some of that's just comments for gratuitous. And that gets to the point that it's not Emacs. You're going to have a lot more customization if your text editor is Emacs. You'll also be much more powerful. So I remind myself I'm customizing Vim to get a little bit more powerful. It's not Emacs, but it'll do. Someday I might use Emacs and be in evil mode. So B2 to get back to where I was, I for insert mode, and then a right click on the trackpad. This is the equivalent of a right click on the trackpad. It's the equivalent of a, what is that? A right click on a mouse, because, I don't use mice anymore. That's stupid. Now I smosh on the K key to scroll back up. Bad practice for Vim. And the poem is called I Don't Want to Blow Up. And it goes something like this. Now, first of all, before I even read it, I got to tell you, I really had to overcome my angel of perfection, my inner self going, you got to have a Windows 11 system ready to actually show the people what you're talking about. And I decided, no, it's not really necessary. Instead, I'll just do a good performance, channeling my inner Adam Sandler, if you will. So I do V to get started, to go into visual mode. That means Shift W will jump from word to word, ignoring punctuation. I don't want to blow up. I'm sad Toys R Us is gone. I get 1 million views on YouTube, sometimes when I'm on, but it doesn't persist, and I throw it away, 'cause I'm here for catharsis and a whole lot of play. The job that I do pays so good that this guy is streaming for you just for pandas and pie. A joke from a geek can either trigger or trot you along the right path in your life. Maybe not. The mind that is open is the place we begin. That Apple would tell you is a place of great sin. I'm gonna share what I do for my sisters and brethren. You get Linuxy too from your Windows 11. You fire up Calm. In the past it was DOS, and it's really still dumb. We're slashing back like a boss. The following words are gonna carry you all through a looking glass wardrobe. WSL install. Now you wait just a minute, maybe 20. Oh, shoot. Tune back here real soon, 'cause I gotta reboot. But when we come back, we'll be in a place where they say is so scary and intimidating, that's to keep you away. Because if you learn a few things, such as LS means list, you're gonna make a few dings and get Ellison pissed. You don't need a sequel, because the data's right here. There's a whole lot to love without VS Code near. Because the world that you're leaving, when you pass through those gates, has the powers believing control your own fates. They know they must let you. They couldn't before. But they're still gonna get you by controlling the door. The terminal window is terminal cause. When you download it, you make your own set of laws. And that's all I have to say about that. Actually, VIPGQ. There's a lot of spells in Vim. Control V. No, not Control V. That's to record a macro. V. W. No, I'm still recording. Q. Okay, so you forget what you're doing because you're not thinking in English when you're using Vim. It's just like driving, as I pointed out on one of my driving videos. Vim gets into your fingers as muscle memory, and you're free to think in English terms. And then your fingers just do what they need to do to get those words down. It's magical. And when you learn to work this way, it's an internal asset of you for your entire life. It's not like learning VS Code. It's not like learning TextEdit. It's not like learning PyCharm. It's not like learning Sublime. It's not like learning Notepad++. It's not like learning the programmer's file editor, PFE. Good one. It's not like learning Cygnus Ed, CED. All you Amiga heads, you go, oh, you're making an Amiga reference to a text editor on the Amiga? Well, yeah, like Vim. Vim started out that way too. Vim started out as a text editor on the Amiga computer in about 1991 on a Fred Fish disk. It was based on VI, the text editor that came before it, written by Bill Joy, which was based on EX before it, which was based on ED before it. It's just, the list goes on. Every giant's built on the shoulders of giants, right? So choose the giants on whose shoulders you're doing your own stuff, even if you're not planning on becoming a giant. Who needs it, right? We don't have to all be Elon Musks and, Linus Torvalds and Ken Thompsons and the guy who wrote Multics and probably someone before him. Sometimes we're just tool users, and tools are important because if they're not becoming internalized and fading into the background to serve you spontaneously, freeing your higher order executive function for the things that are necessary, that really need your attention, then you're not going to do brilliant work. You're always going to be stumbling over the tools because you're not going to be expert at the tools. So the tools do matter. Elon Musk is a little bit wrong there. He doesn't know everything. So anyway. Shift V, I'm in visual mode, so at this point it's not Shift V because that would be line mode. The English eludes me, it's Shift W, so I jump a word at a time, ignoring punctuation. Actually, I have a lot more to say, but a little indoctrination like this is necessary to undo decades of damage caused by Windows dressing slapped on substandard systems that are finally, after 30 years, being replaced by something love-worthy. Live-worthy, love-worthy. There's some channeling. When words get so similar, they get crisscrossed like that. Live, love, laugh. You can ditch the old stuff and future-proof yourself, because the new stuff is really the good old stuff. Oh, spell check. It didn't go away then. It's coming back today after 30, 40 years of suppression. And it's really where you've got to get to right now if you don't want to keep having the latest full web stack fatty thing pulled out from you, forcing you to relearn, to retrain what Joel Spolsky calls fire in motion, which is a game played with the creator of the tools to keep you buying the new tools, to keep you locked into an upgrade cycle. from every 2 to 5 years for the sake of the shareholders. Things are different now. Things are different now primarily because of Linus Torvalds. He is responsible for 2 of the 4 things that I'm encouraging you to get onto as fast as possible. The first, of course, being Linux. The second, of course, for people who watch me, being Python, not something he created, but very similar in spirit, is Guido van Rossum. And then Vim, which is Bill Joy. You got to credit, him for the VI program, and Bram Molinier. I don't know. We'll just search that real quick. I never get the spelling right, so I just grab it from here. Get the correct uppercasing. That's the guy who wrote it on an old Amiga head. And of course Git, which is the other one written by Linus, which just like Linux is named after Linus, right? Because he's a Git. Why is he a Git? Okay, this will be the final parting shot before I wind up this live streaming video that I'm very happy with. I'll check if people are there. Anyone talking to me? Yeah, this is a Sunday morning, lazy Sunday morning, 3 views, no one's concurrent. Such is life, right? So what? What was I going to show you? Oh yeah, Linux is of course copied from Unix, which is Ken Thompson. Right, so Linus did a wonderful implementation of a system created by this guy, who also, by the way, wrote the Go language for Google. Right, so this popular Go programming language, that Google now has replaced all its Python with, right? Because Google was a big Python user. They replaced most of their Python for Go just because of static compiling, concurrency, a few other things that were weak points for Python. Still a lot of Python love around Google, but their systems are now written in the Go language, written by Ken Thompson, who also wrote the Unix operating system in 1970, the year I was born. Where and when was Unix invented? Okay, so there's some Wikipedia entries, but you'll find that Unix was written in what is now the Nokia Bell Labs. But back then it was Bell Labs, part of, what today we know as AT&T. That's Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie sitting down together, doing it together, and invented Unix, arguably the most important computer operating system in the world. Which is what I'm trying to get you on. I'm not BSing here. It's much more important than being on Windows, some proprietary temporary thing. So it was invented somewhere in New York, New Jersey, and I was born in Parsippany, New Jersey, minutes from where Unix was invented, on the year it was invented. I like to think that the spirit of the thing, dude, I don't know, you get what osmosis. And then finally, BitKeeper. Before the Linux kernel was being kept safe and distributed and collaborated with Git, that Linus Torvalds wrote and named after himself, it was being kept on this thing called BitKeeper. I guess I'll go into the Wikipedia version of it because I know from being here before, double checking my facts and stuff, that mousing over this link here will show you Larry McVoy. He is the one who has the most reason in the world to be calling Linus Torvalds Git, because distributed version control systems, which is what BitKeeper is, it's a instance of, let's see if I can get this right, distributed version control system, DVCSs. So DVCSs have changed the world because all the things that made collaborating on software so difficult were solved with this system that has a lot of similarities with how DNA works in life. I won't even get into it. It would make the video way too long. But the innovation was, brought to the commercial world by Larry McVoy, who allowed his BitKeeper software to be used for free on the Linux kernel, on the development of the Linux kernel. Then he wanted to charge for it. So this guy says, yeah, I'll be a Git. I'll be a dumb Git. And I'll just copy Larry's work and, make the fourth most important piece of software you'll ever learn. The first being Linux itself, the second being Python, the third being Vim, and the fourth being, again, by Linus Torvalds himself, Git. So this is where I'm taking you when I tell you to WSL install. Where the heck is that? And it's 2 minuses there, WSL install. It jumped me to a different place in my journal, but that's okay. This is all the public journal. And I guess I told you that was going to be the parting shot, but it won't be. I'll do another parting shot. People like to say, oh, the advantages of VS Code and things like it is that you can edit lots of lines at the same time, they like to say. Yeah, whoops, undo, Control V, Control forward. Yeah, not only can you do it in Vim, you can redo it if you make a mistake like I just did, and almost without thinking. And, you want to record a macro. I'm at the beginning of the line. I hit escape to make sure I'm not in insert mode. And then I hit Q for start recording. You can see, well, can you see? Where's the recording? It should say it. QA, yeah. You have to hit Q, and then you have to hit the character you're going to record into. When you're talking about it, you forget it. As soon as you go meta, the benefits dissolve. But I'm going to try, right? Live performance stuff. So I'm now recording a macro into A. So I hit Shift A to jump to the end of the line and to be in append mode, less than sign BR /. I'd like to do space /. It doesn't look as pretty. Escape 0J. That's the recorded macro. I hit Q to stop recording, and then I play back what's in the A location, and then I can play it back, watch Karnak here, the amazing Karnak. So first of all, just to remind you, I play back the recording that's at A, so that's ampersand A. That actually involves a lot of finger gymnastics, keystrokes. Who needs it? Well, just like everything in Vim, the most common thing you need to do is the original character that starts it and the original character again. Yank, yank, paste, paste, add at, add at, add at, add at. And it leads to my favorite joke. Here is an add at. The big robot walking tank things marching across Hoth. I can't do add at now without thinking that as a geek joke as I format a line talking about geek jokes. Everything is geek jokes in this world I'm trying to introduce you to. We're slashing back like a boss because Microsoft has slashed you in the back with their backslashes. Backslash, slash, backslash, backslash, slash, slash. So I can just hold it down, mosh on it. All right, and then I undo a few. Okay, I'm going to cite myself. 2 more lines, 2 more add-ats, and this lower one becomes cite. Ampersand, number sign, 151, my favorite character, the M dash, Mike Levin, which captures the perfect combination of circular symbols and linear symbols to imply my yin yang, because most of Mike Levin is linear characters, but there's that one E in there, like of Emacs, to say, hey, I'm really a yin spirit. I'm a circular, soft, fuzzy blue. But I wield the weapons and the armor of a green, of a linear, of a yang. So there's that. And I already formatted this lower stuff, so now all I do is &G for my release system. Let's give you a before and after. MikeLev.in. There's my logo. I've been thinking I'd be starting out all my videos with this so that you can go ooh, ah, ooh. But yeah, being in the journal itself is still good. There's that tale of two Pied Pipers I read to you. Now, in light of the new stuff I just read to you, this might take on a little bit more meaning. There's a falsy Pied Piper. It's falsy. The Pied Piper that's false is Microsoft trying to guide you to VS Code. And a flossy Pied Piper, a true and real Pied Piper who's not just free and open source software, but is free as in Libre open source software. There's a falsy Pied Piper and a flossy Pied Piper. And the one that you follow will be a Chromium swiper, because VS Code is built on the Chrome browser library that Microsoft also is using, swiped, for the Edge browser, the browser you see me using. They use those same core components of Google Chrome in order to build VS Code. So the Pied Piper that you're following will either be a Chromium swiper or a terminal typer, a typer into the terminal. And that's done, so we're just waiting for it to generate. It probably is. So I'll just wrap up that last line here. You can see the M dash that I insert with ampersand #, 151. And your fate either sealed or be free. Your fate will either be sealed as a locked-in customer of proprietary software having to pay for something somewhere along the line. Don't believe me? Go to the drop-down menus and look at what you can't get out. I could only rename it. I could not get rid of this Azure Cloud option on this terminal, Microsoft Terminal. This is a piece of software provided by them to get into the terminal typer interface. I can't get rid of Azure Cloud Shell. You can't do it. It doesn't go away. So I could rename it. So I just wrote BWARB, Gravity Falls reference. And then another example, just so that you know it, is that when you create a new tab in Edge, you cannot get rid of the Microsoft logo and the search bar. Believe me, I know, I've tried. There's probably plug-in ways to do it. But now, if you're too fast typing here, your cursor moves over here, and it starts typing there instead. Okay, so the before and after is over here. Remember, the top poem was this poem, A Tale of Two Pied Pipers. We go back, we hit refresh, and there is post 60. I forgot to put a headline on it, so it just uses the number of the post. Before I drill in to show you, I'm just going to use my keyboard shortcut at H, and it puts me in the right place. And I can see, I just pull that back. I don't want to blow up. So the URL is going to change too. Whoops, I made a new journal entry. I meant to do the release system. And so that'll go to the release system, and I'll just show it to you on the alt URL so that you can see, it got published. It got published. And I'll read it to you one more time, all right? And that'll be it. I'll wrap up this video with a refresh showing this go 404. Go back here and show you the original poem. But let's blow it up. I don't want to blow up. I'm sad Toys R Us is gone. I get 1 million views on YouTube sometimes when I'm on, but it doesn't persist and I throw it away. 'Cause I'm here for catharsis and a whole lot of play. The job that I do pays so good that this guy is just streaming for you for the pandas and pie. A joke from a geek can either trigger or trot you along the right path for your life, maybe not. The mind that is open is the place we begin. That Apple will tell you is a place of great sin. I'm going to share what I do for my sisters and brethren. You get Linuxy too from your Windows 11. You fire up COM, In the past, it was DOS. And still really dumb, we're slashing back like a boss. The following words are going to carry you all through a looking glass wardrobe. WSL install. Oh, it combined it. I've got to make sure that's 2 hyphens. Now you wait just a minute, maybe 20. Oh shoot, tune back here real soon because I got to reboot. But when we come back, we'll be in a place where they say is so scary and intimidating, that's to keep you away. Because if you learn a few things, such as ls means list, you're going to make a few dings in the universe, as Steve Jobs used to say, and get Larry Ellison pissed, because he's the head of Oracle, the king of proprietary. You don't need a SQL, which is like their product, SQL Server, because the data's right here. There's a whole lot of love without VS Code near. In the same way Microsoft is going to trip you into using Azure sooner or later. They're going to trip you into using VS Code sooner or later. You can depend on that. Because the world that you're leaving when you pass through those Bill Gates has the powers, them, believing, control your own fates. Little transition issue. Maybe I'll fix it, maybe not. They know they must let you, because you're going to be on Linux sooner or later. The writing's on the door. They couldn't before, because they could keep you on their proprietary systems with no downsides. But they're still going to get you, even when they yield to the reality of the day. They are high strategy, Machiavellian bastards, and they're still going to get you by controlling the door. Controlling the door. The Azure. The door is Azure there. The door is the Windows logo and the Bing search there. The terminal window, which is that thing I keep flipping back to show you, is terminal cause when you download it, you all make your own laws. And, maybe I'll change that as maybe a concession to rhyme there. You try and make it perfect. The symmetry, when it is exactly your meaning, is a great gift. A great gift from those places you channel these things, places unknown. However, you make your own laws. It's so open-ended that in itself becomes a serious downside. So I have one set of laws that really does work quite well for a lot of people, including myself, who can't venture into the harder worlds that are out there. Because frankly, there are much harder worlds. When I say Linux, Python, Vim, and Git, I could just be saying OS 9, Bell OS, Bell. There's a replacement for Unix and Linux, which is Unix and Linux perfected from the same people at Bell Labs. That's why it's named Bell 9. There's a better OS out there. Some would say the Amiga OS or the BOS. There's other OSs that are more lightweight, carry many of the same benefits. Python, okay? You think I'm going to say JavaScript. Oh, no. It's Lisp. Lisp is the other great language of the world. Because if you're giving up the 80-20 solutions rules, the 80-20 benefits, the benefit of being in the mainstream, doing what most logical and reasonable people would want to do most of the time, that's linear, that's Yang, that's Python, you would be uncompromising in what you were doing, inventing it from scratch, burning your computers from sand. That's Lisp. And that is the Emacs editor as opposed to the Vim editor. So Vim versus Emacs, VI versus Emacs, the great text wars are not dead. They're as alive now as ever. As the population of the world grows, the people who are going to have to be choosing their vibe alignment between Python and Vim versus Lisp and Emacs is a greater number of people than ever before in history. This is not old school. This is what's going on right now today. The text editor wars has nothing to do with VS Code. And then finally, Git because it's a necessary evil. I would advocate something called Mercurial. Mercurial, named after, I guess, this Greek god of, tricks and speed and messages and stuff. And it's abbreviated HG. It's even one letter less. So whereas Git, Mercurial is not only named after a better person to name this stuff after, the HG is an element. HG element. Oh, of course, it's Mercury. Oh, it's got to be. It's just as brilliant. It's as brilliant in every way, and it's native Python too, so it can be integrated into your Python apps and packages better than Git can be. So, an alternate, but I wouldn't say that for people who've gone the Lisp Emacs route. They're probably going to write their own distributed version control system because that's one of the things you can do under Emacs. All right, I could ramble on forever, but you get the idea. That's been my Dr. Strange, my very strange. Being strange has its perks. My strange poem. I do a refresh. It's, of course, gone with a 404. And I hit the back arrow once. I do a refresh here. I don't want to blow up. And that's where I'll end this. I'm never going to be a million view YouTuber, except on the occasional video when I unbox a Raspberry Pi. When something as significant as the Raspberry Pi comes along again, once a decade. I must have missed one. I wonder what it was. I'll unbox it in front of you and get a million views. Or if I'm the first one to show a finger trick, the removable finger trick, I have the million views on this because I was first before all the people who know that trick realize, hey, I can jump on the bandwagon too. But first mover advantage on this. Hopefully, maybe this is it. This is the next thing after the 10 years. It's been 12 years. It's been 13 or 14 years. It was 2012. No, it's been 10. 2012 is when I unboxed it, but the Raspberry Pi really came out like 2011, really, and it's almost 2023. So, no, I'm pretty close. It's about 12 years. So 12 years later, the most important thing since the Raspberry Pi is opening a COM window. I'm certainly not going to really initiate it here, and it only works well on Windows 11. I have it right there, but all you other folks, just start typing COM. Command prompt. It's your command prompt window, old-fashioned DOS. When you get one of these, I can't even do Control Plus to make it big for you. These things are so ancient and horrible. You type WSL -- install. If you're on Windows 11, that will change your life. I promise you. I promise you. And the first command you're going to want to learn is ls. And then you'll want to learn cd for current directory. And there's a handful of others that you'll need. But, before long, sooner rather than later, because Linux will be running in this awful command prompt window, you got to get Linux running instead in a terminal window like this, which you get by going into the Microsoft Store. I left the icon out there. And, it's the last thing I searched. I'm hopeful about Jupyter getting into the Windows Store. That'll take care of the last bad problem with Jupyter Lab Desktop. It doesn't auto-update, so it's a little disappointing that isn't in here. But you look for Windows Terminal. There will be 2 versions. This version, which is for everyone. This version that I don't have installed, so you can get it. Or this version, which is Windows Terminal Preview, which is the bleeding edge one, which I do have installed. And that's what you see running over there. And it's better for me because I like the new features. I eagerly anticipate new features in the terminal, which some people will curse me on because they'll be like, oh, iTerm was around forever. Like, you're acting like Microsoft invented terminals. Having a mainstream terminal supported by Microsoft, installable from the web store, that's tabbed and unifies everything and is your gateway off of Windows, it's worth it just for the irony. Come on, folks. Anyway, thanks for joining me. I do my one last check to see if anyone actually joined in for chat. I'll talk to you if they did. No, 7 views. I hope to see you again soon. Why does Windows have, oh my goodness, someone's there talking. Are you still there? Why does Windows have a command line and a PowerShell? Because before Microsoft yielded to Linux, they tried copying it. Anyone used to bash or corn shell hated DOS command prompts with a passion. There were third-party solutions, but in the same spirit, they made Windows Terminal. Today, they made PowerShell to work Unix/Linux-like. Really Unix-like. They weren't copying Linux back in those days. Unix-like back then. Sysadmins who had to use Windows could at least feel comfortable with PowerShell having commands like ls versus dir as it did. Oh, you're still here. Okay, great. This is my first time talking to someone actually in the audience. Yeah, so I'll say it comfortably now. Yeah, Microsoft knows a good thing when they see it. It's not like they don't know that these features over on the Linux side, the bizarro other world, are good, and they want those good features on their own systems, and they have a tendency to try and invent it here. You know, everyone has not invented here syndrome. They weren't going to very well include Cygwin, which could turn your Windows system into a very good POSIX compliant Unix system. Cygwin was and still is awesome, but instead of going with that heavy-handed solution, they just kind of made a super DOS prompt. I hope that answers it. Yeah, okay, well, I'll keep going. I love this streaming stuff. I wrap this up like I'm recording a video, and I don't feel the social aspect of this like nearly at all. I'll try and break this thing out so that I can show you something here. Pop out chat so I can show you other interesting things on the screen instead of just my silly streaming stuff. Okay, so here's a benefit for you. You want to get this on another window and you're running virtual desktops? It's Windows Tab, and then you drop the one you want onto the window you want to talk about. So the most interesting one to talk about has got to be the terminal, which is worth dropping it onto because ArrowSnap, Microsoft does some very nice things. I don't mean to put them down for everything. And of course, it's not a single person. It's not just Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer anymore. When it was really at its worst, it's a whole bunch of good human beings now. So you got to credit them for where credit is due. And their implementation of ArrowSnap to divide screens up is very nice. Their implementation of the terminal here is very nice too. You know, in fact, their whole implementation of Linux under Windows is very nice, and they're working out the final bugs. So I'll tell you the truth, I'm not on Windows 11 yet because of this screen transition. This screen transition here evokes in me the days of the Amiga computer. It was Amiga N on the Amiga computer. It didn't have the left-right swooshing. It just two between screens. And I miss that. I miss that intensely. And it appeared first on the Macintosh. It was built into how the Mac switched virtual desktops, and then it appeared on Windows. And I never went back. I don't even need a mouse. You can use a 3-finger swoosh. I'm doing it wrong, but Macs are lean towards the 2 or 3-fingered swoosh on the trackpad. Windows leans towards window key combination. I'm using Manjaro, and it has features like this too. Yeah, in the third party, there will always be a superior version to Microsoft's implementation. I am not about superior implementations. I don't use Tmux, for example. Another example where there's other things better than what I use. I need a screen terminal server, so that I can run sessions that are, like this on remote servers, and I can exit without stopping the jobs. And everyone out there is going to tell you to use Tmux. I use what's built in to the GNU is not Unix command set called Screen. Screen is not as good as Tmux. I'm the first to admit it, but Screen is included as a standard. It's there on the drive. Any machine I sit down on, it's there. This was my original reason for choosing Vim over Emacs. I've come to fall in love with Vim, but my original reason was that same reasoning. And now that I'm really a user of Vim, the same argument exists for Vim versus many other things. The most popular right now is NeoVim. I readily admit, like NeoVim has this cursor versus the I-beam built in as its default mode. It has all these nice little touches, but I'd rather edit my vimrc to make the proper Vim work this way, because any machine I sit down on now has Vim on it instead of the original VI. All the versions of Linux are kind of marching in step now. Yeah, I like Screen too. Yeah. Oh, so honestly there, what do I call you? You're TMPK. Okay. So honest, and I hate to say honestly because it means most of the time I'm not honest. And that's actually true. Most of the time I'm not honest because I don't advocate normally people going to my tools. I think they're too difficult. They're too not mainstream. But now because of the command WSL install working without this large convoluted turning on hypervisor process, which is still that way on Windows 10, I actually advocate doing it. I'm actually becoming more honest because I'm not asking people to have this agonizing experience to get there. You type this one magical incantation here and you've got Linux working right in that command prompt where you typed it. I forget if a reboot is required, but it's easy. And in the same sense, I'm advocating Vim now, where I actually would have guided people to VS Code in the past. It's nice that, yeah, okay, nice, yeah, I'm rereading. But when you catch up, I know there's a time lag, and I know it's probably quite frustrating, but I'll answer questions for as long as you have them. This is such a novel thing, although I am going to have to leave at around 10 a.m., and I'm going to have to get my kid ready at around 9:30. Oh, it's 9:50, 10, 11. Oh, no, I'm just have to wake them up at 10 because we have to be out of here at noon. So I'm good. Okay, yeah. So, I'm teaching people how to get just to that point where they can keep a journal in Vim, right? Keep a journal in Vim. But I'm definitely working towards LXD under WSL, okay? Once you have the LXD under WSL, you then are going to be using the systemd system to make Linux services. All right, that's where we're going here. Now, when you're making Linux services, you demystify, you make them understandable by still looking at their terminal output. And of course, as a user of Screen, that's where I'm going with that. I like to run Linux services so that they have screen output. GNU Screen is how I do that. I never run a system service directly. I run a system service so that it's running in a GNU Screen so that I can log in and watch it run all the time. And that can be done now just on a standard Windows 11 machine with WSL running and LXD to get your containerized versions of other Linuxes so that you're not foobarring, you're not messing up your one master version of Linux. It's still an issue. Yeah, it's funny to. Oh, okay, so you're on a pure version of Linux, and it's interesting to hear about WSL. Yeah, you know what? I wish I had a mirror to hold up to my laptop. I am no fan of being on Windows 10 first and Linux second. I would rather be on a pure Linux desktop. But then you got your driver problems and your peripheral support problems, and none of the games that you buy for your kid will run. And, so what's going to happen? It's a self-solving problem. Microsoft is clearly replacing all the proprietary bits about Windows with a very OpenStack-like system with a hypervisor and a DOM privileged small version of the operating system. And then what we know as Windows today will really just be another instance of a Linux kernel with a Windows shell on top of it, exactly the way that Apple does it today with Unix, using a shell called Cocoa on top. Probably some version of Wayland being used for the screen stuff, but you just wait long enough and you'll just be on Linux anyway, just with a Windows shell instead of a Ubuntu shell. Yeah, you're not playing games, so you don't have that. I agree. I'm not much of a game player myself, but then it gets down to I pay $800 for this laptop, and there's no muss, no fuss if I just take the operating system that's pre-installed. You lean into the strengths. I do run ArtRage. I do run art programs, and I want that Microsoft stylus to continue working. I could flip over here to another screen and show you that. I don't need the Microsoft Store loaded anymore, but you can see one of my keyboard shortcuts. So that's my Jupyter screen. We don't want that. I'll exit out of this. I'll exit out of this one. The poetry's over. So I keep ArtRage right here, and when I load that, I don't have my stylus within arm's reach, but I can draw, and then I can flip the stylus over and use the back of the stylus as an eraser. Being able to run ArtRage in the first place, and then being able to flip the pen around and erase it, that's so many layered up things that, if you're using Windows 10, it just all works like a charm. And if you're really on, say, Ubuntu or one of the other popular desktop versions of Linux, you're not going to get that kind of driver support on this laptop. You'll be lucky to get, the equivalent of ArtRage running. I mean, I know there's GIMP and Kira or whatever, but they're just not as good as proprietary. This is one of the places where paying $50 for a piece of proprietary software is still better than like using GIMP for painterly things. Because you can have a version of this on your phone, on your tablet. ArtRage is on everything. They're just one of the good guys in the paid proprietary software. I believe in supporting them. I believed that once about text editors. I'm a paid customer of Sublime, for example, lifetime upgrades. But it doesn't work out in the text editor world. The retraining your muscle memory on text editors is different from retraining your muscle memory on a stylus. I mean, styluses are all the same everywhere. A lot of stuff. Let me catch up with you. Can you talk about why some people hate Systemd so much? You don't get it. Okay, yeah. So Systemd is, first of all, copied from Apple's implementation when they needed system management on the Macintosh. So I forget exactly. It's something very similar. It's like, Manager D or something. Apple did it first. And then the person who wrote Systemd in the Linux world copied Apple, as these things often are. So the crowd who doesn't like it is already quite unhappy with the kind of Linuxes that it's going on, okay? So before Systemd, it was the init.d system. You wrote a bunch of little scripts that went into the initialization directory, and you wrote one script for starting things, one script for stopping things. If you were really good, you could write one bash script that did the start, the stop, the restart, and it required bash shell scripting skills. It still does, and there are still versions where people prefer to work that way. There's Arch, There's Gentoo, or Gentoo if you prefer, and they haven't taken this last step. Now, this last step, where it's been formalized, happened to have been on the very, 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 very popular Debian version. So Debian implemented systemd before other major versions of Linux, and because Ubuntu, or Ubuntu if you prefer, is based on Debian, and Ubuntu is for many reasons becoming the canonical, right? It's a real inside joke, right? Because everyone knows Ubuntu, nobody knows that the company it comes from is called Canonical, which was wishful thinking until Microsoft partnered with them as the preferred version of Linux that gets installed with WSL, therefore making their company name choice very prophetic. They are now the canonical version of Linux. And so the canonical version of Linux, Ubuntu, uses systemd. So why the hate? The hate is because it's yet another monolithic piece of software taking on the responsibility of more things than just starting and stopping services like the old systemd. It partitions system space from user space. And so when you have a monolithic piece of software taking increasing responsibilities, it's more places for bugs, it's more surface area for hackers, it's one thing that goes wrong where everyone jumps on the bandwagon to exploit it, like happened with OpenSSD lately. So there's just a certain old school kind of person who prefers to write bash scripts and have less surface area and less, there's no reason to say more. They prefer less surface area to be attacked by hackers, and they understand the smaller bits enough that it's not a problem for them. All right, I have a potato PC, so that is also a reason why I am on Linux. Yeah. So that driver stuff, if you want to just walk into a Best Buy when lockdown occurs and say, I need a laptop for my kid, I need a laptop for my wife, what do you have? And to get the power of the mainstream, you don't have to be a slave of what's available on Amazon or, shortages. You just go, the power of the mainstream is both the great compromise and a place you can find the love-worthy bits. It's not easy. When you do what you do, getting a potato PC, and you start out from a place of uncompromising, you're going to wait longer for it. You're going to do more research getting it. You're going to be part of a smaller community who has it. So, but you're going to feel good, it's uncompromising. You did what you want. However, you go off as a reason for art rage, right? So you go off of the center of the average distribution curve. Okay, so what I'm talking about is very much the fact that all things have this curve to them, with this axis here being diversity. Diversity increasing towards either end, towards the niche or towards the specialized. I mean, is niche and specialized the same thing? I don't know. That's why it's a bell curve as opposed to 1 over x or something like this. I could probably show you the same thing with a 1 over x curve. But the 80-20 rule just asks you to start to plan your tasks, so when you're only 1/5 done, you could have stopped and still have won. I live in the 80% that is the center line of the average distribution curve. I could bullet point the reasons, but you get it. I'm willing to compromise and find the love in here because I feel the driver support and various other things is actually worth it. But, that's not for everybody. Lisp lives out here or over here because Lisp is very special. And Vim lives in here. And VS Code lives here. Right? You get the idea. Now, I don't compromise everything. I'm not going to, but I do a little bit. I have VS Code. There's going to be times when I have to edit a JSON file, for example, where I'm going to load VS Code. It's under, it's still Microsoft. Should be one of those. I don't know, but it's around. I've got VS Code. Trust me. Next. You're good. You're like my straight man. I love this. My first community experience. I have to thank you for this. It's just as fun to talk to people, it turns out, as it is to do my own thing. I'll probably have to schedule these things so that people know when to tune in. Don't feel like you have to follow up. This has been a great success, and probably a video 2 or 3 times as long as I planned, covering interesting and very related topics. So if that's it, thank you. If not, I'll hang around for a minute or two, maybe checking the screens if there's any sharding pot points I want to make. Enough coffee and you're going to have sharding pot points. I have recently learned about Vim and am blaming myself for not knowing about it sooner. Yeah, you and me both. So, you know, honestly, okay, let me see if I can spell this guy's name. A shout out to 2 people. Really, there's 3 people who have to be thanked. The first is Tim O'Reilly. I have no idea who, I mean, I don't know him personally, but Tim O'Reilly ensured the continuing life and vibrancy of this community. Vim, I think it's an owl book. Yeah, Vim owl book. So this is the creator of the Makerspace, maybe the How book, the How publication, or the Make publication. He did a publication called Make. And he also published this, was in the first in the animal series, and he really breathed a lot of life into it. So I'm probably using it today because of him. Bram Molyneux, I already mentioned, Bill Joy, who created the original implementation. And then a draconian son of a bitch sysadmin from Scala, where I used to work, said, oh, I guess you're going to have to be on Vim then, or start working on your VI skills, when I told him I was interested in Linux. And he said it in such a snooty way, I decided I was going to go with Nano and Pico, or maybe at that time the Sun text editor. So there's the Sun text editor. And then there's Pico, which I think is the Unix version for people who don't want Vim. And then there's Nano, and you could get away with it forever without really learning Vim. There was a lot of ways to avoid Vim. But then finally, let's see, who was that? If I said, got me onto VI. No, really? It's those 2 people. It's not 3. I'm thinking Python. There was someone who had tried to get me onto Python sooner. But I found my way back to Vim after it's 1991. It was on Fred Fish. 1991. Here, let's get the actual Fred Fish disk that Vim came out on. This is when I first learned of it, mind you. Tony Antonuccio, that's the 3rd person. So Tony Antonuccio was a user group member who said, here, you ought to look at this Fred Fish disk. Fred Fish Vim. Let's see if the label comes up in the first position. We'll just go to all. Birth of Vim. Download Fredfish number 591. I got to remember that, 591. Yeah. Oh, and the year that came out, 1991. I had it right. So 1991, 2021, 1991, 2001. That's 10 years. 2011. That's 20 years. 2021. That's 30 years ago. I was introduced to Vim. I've been using Vim for about 10 years now. So that's 20 years I could have been using it and getting that muscle memory and the telepathic control of text. So you can kick yourself. Go ahead, kick yourself. But I'm going to kick myself more. Yeah, Nano for a long time. Yeah. You know, it's easy. Even today, if you're finally getting onto Git, right? And you do a merge, and you do an accidental thing that creates a merge between your version and someone else's version, the merge, the comment that pops up is automatically going to be in Nano, and that is just such a crime, because, you know, the powers that be of Git, I guess it's Linus's decision, they decide to not introduce people to Vim. Just make them learn how to make a comment in Vim. They yield. They cried uncle, and they said, just use nano, make the default configuration. And it's wrong. Git, because so many people have to use Git, should be leading people to use Vim. So you fell into a trap that a lot of people fall into. Now, I would say I'm going to save this and I'm going to quit. I have to quit twice because I load a lot of text files at once. I'm going to clear, and I'm going to tell you that Vim Tutor, Vim Tutor, and I'll do a few control minuses so you can see it on the screen. For anyone really new to this, Vim is already installed. If you WSL space minus minus install and you get Linux on your Windows 11 system, one of the first things you're going to want to do is just type Vim Tutor, because Vim is already on your machine. Now, it looks like something goes wrong, which is funny, but there's a Vim Tutor here. You can actually learn about it without knowing Vim ahead of time. It teaches you all that key skills about the JKL and H, JKLH, to replace cursor keys. And it walks you through it. So first, it teaches you enough to just move your cursor around and scroll. And then it teaches you exiting Vim, the funniest joke in the world. How far did you get in learning Vim? Well, just learning how to exit the program is a challenge. So it's a steep learning curve, but of all things, it's worth it. And I used to be dishonest. I used to say, put off the learning of Vim. Do Python first, and do Python via Jupyter Notebooks and Jupyter Lab. And so even, put off Linux, because you do that under an Anaconda install back in the day. So all my views are really changing. I'm coming around to being honest, saying get to Vim as soon as possible, because it's easy to do today, and it's going to make the largest impact and change in your life, because this applies to everything: personal journaling, coding any language, sitting down at any computer that either has or doesn't have a graphical user interface, a visual desktop, writing scripts to control remote computers, writing scripts to control thousands of remote computers. So it ties into power and scaling and choice and vendor independence and so many things. Okay, so I'll check back for any more type, and I'll look around to see anything worth saying. So much good stuff. I'll close my tab, see if anything jogs my memory. Birth of Vim, 1991. Fred Fish, 591. So there's 291s in there. That's how I remember it. It was Fred Fish 591 in the year 1991. Thank you, Tony Antonuccio. Microsoft controls the doors. You cannot get away from traps in your doors. The Azure trap door. B-warb. Control plus and minus. If you don't do it, you should. There's a release system. Pip install blog slicer if you want the power of search optimized, keyworded, fill in the blank, easy insertion of YouTube videos, easy insertion of images. There's an image inserted using Vim macros. Linus Torvalds, not terribly creative in an implementation way, but is a Git because he stole from, so he black box re-engineered from Ken Thompson to create Linux from Ken's Unix, and he black boxed BitKeeper to create Git from Larry McVoy's BitKeeper. And there's BitKeeper, and there's Larry. And there's Ken and Richie back in the year I was born. Maybe it's the year I was born, but certainly, within 50 miles of where I was born, during the year I was born, inventing the operating system that has come to replace the Amiga in my heart, because I'm an old Amiga freak. And I really love the Amiga now, again, because I realize how much of it was inspired by Unix and what a fast track and shortcut it put me on, and you know, really going to portable operating systems. The Go language, written by Ken Thompson, the same guy who invented Unix, now working, or was working, for Google, along with Pike. Go Lang Pike, another guy who needs to be credited. You can't just credit Ken Thompson, but Rob Pike was another seminal Unix developer. He did a lot of the important stuff, and he was the collaborator, a lot of operating system stuff. He was the collaborator. You can see Plan 9, I was calling it Bell 9, but Plan 9 is that other Linux like, or in Unix like operating system, which is perfected. I need to know about this guy more, so I'll save him into my Instapaper. You know, Ken, I talk about a lot. Bram is awesome. I kid you not. Adam Sandler, I channeled him when reading my poetry. They're live streaming to you all. I got 2 at once at times. That was fun. And YouTube itself, which my suggestions are always quite important. I have no special talent, says Einstein. I am only... That's worth writing. Ben Franklin had the same opinion. Both Ben Franklin and Einstein will tell you that they're not intellectual giants. Honestly, they're going to tell you that. I always run my things saying, you know, that all script. I can ls to show you the things I have running at the same time. There's no danger in doing my journal because, you know, it always opens at the top here, and a macro would start a new thing. I could type in my private journal in front of you, and my private journal has some interesting poetry there. Oh, it's nice to listen about the history from me. I am just 17, so it seems I got lucky learning Vim. Yes. Yes, TMPK. Keksky? TMPK Skex. Are you a Skexy? Are you a... Chamberlain. I'm going to call you Chamberlain. You did get lucky learning Vim at 17, finding your way to it. You have taken up the samurai sword of the information tech world. Emacs is not the samurai sword of the infotech world. Samurai sword is made for one purpose: to pull it out quickly and to slash a person's head off. Instant decapitation. VI and Vim are made for instant decapitation. They are the samurai sword of the infotech world. Emacs is the magic wand. It just can cast so many spells it can't be categorized. What does a magic wand do? What do you want a magic wand to do? That's Emacs, but VI and Vim are the samurai sword, and it's fortunate to know it. Hungarian. Oh, Keksy means goat. Oh, greatest of all time. Yeah, goat. It's a very big meme these days here, at least in English. There's a lot of things that are goats because they're the greatest of all time. And I wish that for you. You deserve to be the greatest of all time. And you have the time to work with. Having mastering tools and internalizing them before you're like even out of school and have to support yourself is such a gift. However you found your way to that. By the way, I am part Hungarian as well. I'm part Polish and part Hungarian. I don't have to try pronouncing it. Thank you. All right, let's continue closing the tabs and see if my friend, the Chamberlain there, has any more. Oh, the reference to the Chamberlain, right? Got to show you that. Oh, it doesn't show the right Chamberlain at first. Okay. Yeah. You don't need your mug showing anymore. A lot of channeling in the Dark Crystal movie. We'll close that and we'll just leave the streaming one going for a bit. I closed all my tabs there. Markdown. If you don't do it yet, the Jekyll system in GitHub, known as GitHub Pages, is a really great way to publish. So mine should be mclevin. To see this, not everything, but to see my latest of that, I should be able to just go to mclevin, which is my GitHub handle, github.io/ the repo name that was publish me. And there it is, the tutorial I was giving using this file actually exists right out here, publish. That's how easy it is to publish. So if you're a GitHub site user, you've got this free publishing system called Jekyll. And there are better systems, Jekyll and Hyde. But, you know, it's the mainstream. This is another exact case of that average, distribution curve. Jekyll lives in here. I don't think I didn't spell it right, but that's a static site generator. And there's another static site generator that's arguably even better, but it hides down here. Because you'll see, this is the argument for being on or off the average distribution curve of what's supported. Hide, HYDE, hide, static site generator. And you'll go to hide, and they'll give some information how to install it. It's much faster, but you're going to find warnings. It might not be right here. You're going to find warnings. It's unsupported right now. It has stalled out. It was written in Python, right? So it should be close to my heart. This is an exact analogy to why I don't use Mercurial and the HG thing. Even though it's faster, it has more benefits, and it was written native in Python. It does everything the mainstream thing does and more. I can't use it because I don't want to get stuck. I don't want, I don't want those gotchas. And you might think that being on Vim versus VS Code is a similar thing. Why be on Vim when you could be on VS Code and be in the mainstream? The reality is exactly the opposite. The reason it isn't viewed that way is because of Microsoft marketing. VS Code is written on web, full stack development tools on a visual desktop. It's fragile. It's a house of cards. Vim, which has been around in one form or another, going back to VI, for half a century. It's the pea in the pool of tech. It's in and it's never coming out. You can't say that of VS Code, no matter how big of a movement it is right now. So that was a little ramble I did. That was from looking at this thing here. Right? I'll get out of that. I always use foo. Foo is so important. And if you're learning Linux, if you're just new to Linux, one of the biggest tricks, because most things, when I talk about Linux, Python, Vim, and Git, honestly, you get to Python and Vim and Git real quick, but you don't do much in Linux. When you want to start a file, the most important trick to know, and this is a bash trick, it's a little different on Corn Shell. You would use print as opposed to echo, but on almost any Linux terminal you open up, you can go, or Unix for that matter, you can go echo, I am in a file. And you can use output redirection, which is the greater than arrow, and say a file.txt or whatever extension you want. And then you can look at it. You don't have to use Vim to look at it. That's my temptation, but you can use the less program. A file, and there it is. I am in a file. I am in a file. The words I am in a file is in a file.txt. Use Q to get out of it because everything uses the same keyboard shortcuts as Vim and VI, these little tools. So I could go into it with Vim, a file, and show it to you in a more familiar, setting. And that was a Linux command. If you're introducing someone to Unix or Linux for the first time, you could do a lot worse than starting with command line redirection. It's one of the tenets of Unix. It's part of how Unix was invented as Unix. Doing stupid data piping tricks like that is central to Unix. Okay. I think I'm going to just review the final things because I'm going to have to wake my kid up real soon and get on the way to get them to soccer. Looks like there might be lightning and thunderstorms today, which would have the thing canceled, but I will have hell to pay if I don't get them there on time anyway. So quit out of Art Rage. Quit out of here. Keep that running because otherwise I wouldn't be streaming. And that does it. That quit out of everything down to the last final things. I quit out of that COM window. We don't need that COM window. And this is my normal state with the exception of the OBS software running here for the streaming. I really, keep about 7. It's at my normal amount. This is worth saying for anyone who's picking this apart for my self-imposed autistic habits. I keep this full screen, which it isn't full screen now because of concessions to streaming. That's absolutely fine. And that's screen 1. It's this full screen. I'll go to that. And then function F11, the worst keyboard shortcut ever. This is focus mode. Focus mode. Yeah, I'll sign off with a little bit of a journal reading for those who haven't heard this yet. The 80-20 friggin' rule, gotta use it. It's a tool. Reducing clutter that we pack into our lives that hold us back when goals elude and time flies past, and with each step you're still in last. Consider how you lost your aim. You'll find recursive tasks to blame. With each thing you set to do, 100 more come fly at you, until at last you quite forget the goal for which you had first set. The 80-20 rule just asks you to start to plan your tasks, so when you're only 1/5 done, you could have stopped and still have won. Use your powerful internalized assets in creative new ways. Replace distractions with love-worthy and righteous new things. The best way to learn is to teach, so always be teaching. And figure out how to release the already built up potential in things. That's why oil is so valuable in this world. It's the order brought to us by life and left behind as a gift. And then you're getting ready to start on any given day for work. What's most broken? Look around you. The world is your checklist. Look around you. What's most broken? Don't just do whatever fixing what's broken. Where do you get the biggest bang for the buck? You could start to jump into what's most broken, but there lie rabbit holes. And if you jump down a rabbit hole, you might not be coming back up, and that whole day or week or year or life might be lost. So you ask yourself, where is the biggest bang for the buck? What can I do right now in one sitting? Not a project, a thing. What thing can I do right now in one sitting that makes all the difference? But it can't be at the sacrifice of all those other things you have to keep going, that you're responsible for. Things cannot come crashing to the floor, so you must ask yourself what plates need to be spun. And you might even want to do that before. So there's like a preemptive thing. You might need to spin a few plates before you tackle where the biggest thing for the buck is. And you might need to tackle where the biggest thing for the buck is before you address what's most broken. You see? So why am I not further ahead at 50 years old? I am as much, much, much further ahead than it looks at 50 years old, because I have internalized everything that's important to internalize in me. Not completely. Everyone's on a journey, no matter how much you know. It's wise, like Socrates or some other Russian writer, I always got to get it down, to admit that there is more that you don't know than what you already know. And the wisest people in the world are partially wise because they know how much they don't know. And so we begin. We activate the vocal center of the brain, encoding, channeling, coming from places we truthfully, honestly, that word I shouldn't be using again, honestly know not where from. Oh, his brain is just an emergent property of physics. You don't know. Consciousness is still not understood. So, honk the nose of know-it-all big dogs. Thank you. That has been one for the history books. Function F11. Oh, I don't need to do function F11. I can do Windows tab, grab the chat window, pull it back here to somewhere where I can see it. Yeah. F12 is XCFE2. Oh, yeah. Yeah, these function keys are really difficult because you have to hold down a function modifier, and I don't like it. I'm not a fan. Keyboards are not perfect, but another great example of where you live with the imperfection and lean into its strengths. QWERTY, right? Doesn't end with the function keys. There's so many things wrong with keyboards, but choose a favorite, stick with it, stick to the mainstream. You don't need to retrain your fingers on new keyboards all the time. Oh, the desktop environment you're using, right? XCFE is the lightweight GNOME or KDE, right? That's that one that people use if you don't want one of the heavyweight Linux desktops. It's been a while since I looked at XCFE, and there's probably a proper way to pronounce it. You've been wonderful. You've been wonderful, Chamberlain. Thank you so much for being my straight person in this video. I'm going to try and really engage people here in these live streams. It's got to be one of the advantages of doing it this way. If you're not going to edit, you might as well be social, right? Okay, I'm going to sign out now. I really got to get moving. Thanks for joining me, especially you, my Hungarian friend. It's been a pleasure, and hope to see you again soon. You're welcome. Yeah. Anyone out there who's watching this in the playback in the recording, don't forget to subscribe, thumbs up the video, and I'll do more of this if you give me positive feedback. I do it still currently more for myself than I do for you, but I have an open mind. If you want me to blow up, I'll blow up. I'll be the Pied Piper that I think the world desperately needs. I'm just not going to do it if, it's disheartening to me. No one wants to do stuff where, the gratitude level is low and there's, nothing but crickets out there. It takes a very strong artist to do their thing and to keep going with it to the day they're dead and not get recognized until after they're gone. So I make very good money in my day job. Thank you very much. But this is fun too. So I hope to do more of it. Take care. Goodbye.